What is up, Steeler fans? It's time for Behind Enemy Lines, Week 17. My gosh, I cannot believe the regular season is going as quickly as it is, but we're getting ready for a Christmas Day game. Steelers Chiefs at Acrisure Stadium, and joining me, covering the Chiefs for Fans First Sports Network, is Steven Serda. Steven, how are you today?
I'm doing wonderful, Jeff. Despite all of the criticisms, the Kansas City Chiefs are still in the driver's seat with one loss on the season. So it's been pretty good, and they're actually playing pretty well right now. So that's been it's been a positive turn over the last 4 weeks or so.
There's been a lot of noise about the Chiefs this year, just the whole season. And I get it. I feel like the Chiefs are entering that Tom Brady Patriots realm, which is everyone loves to hate them because they get sick of seeing the same team win. However, the one score stuff is just really, really crazy. What's been the fan base reaction to the Chiefs' success this year? Do they feel like they're walking that tightrope, or do they feel like good teams find ways to win every week?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think there's fans that watch every single Chiefs game, and over the last couple of years, like the trend this season is insane, but it's not that far off from what we got from them last season, which was still a Super Bowl season for the Kansas City Chiefs. But then there's also the overreaction fans. Like I've seen people call for Andy Reid to get fired and for Brett Veach to get fired, and it's like, what do you want them to do? Like they win Super Bowls. They're the best team in the NFL. That's why everyone hates them, because they keep finding ways to win. It's not pretty. It's certainly not always entertaining, but what else do they have to do? They're not losing football games. So it's a mix of both, but I think most rational Chiefs fans understand that it's a grinded out kind of season like it was last year, but it seems like things are turning around at the right time for the Chiefs.
So I think first and foremost, I want to ask you about potential weaknesses in this lineup for the Chiefs. And we can go offense, defense. I'll let you handle that. But this Chiefs team is not the high-powered offense that we're accustomed to seeing from the Kansas City Chiefs, quarterbacked by Patrick Mahomes and run by Andy Reid. What's going on with the offense not putting up as many points? But like you said, people that paid attention, this is kind of their MO from last year as well, and they won a Super Bowl doing it. What's the weaknesses on either side of the football?
Well, injuries have obviously played a huge role in the Chiefs offense this season. Like, I think if you get a full season of Hollywood Brown and Rashee Rice, even with an aging Travis Kelce, like we're talking about a totally different narrative around the Chiefs offense as we get close to the playoffs. But the biggest issue for them all season long has been the offensive line. They drafted Wanya Morris last season as a guy that they were hoping they could develop into a potential starting left tackle. Then they drafted Kingsley Suamataia in this year's draft class. And he was a guy that like some people had first round grades on, but he's like a developmental left tackle who needed seasoning and needed time to grow as a player because he's really young. And he actually won the starting job coming out of training camp for the Chiefs this season. Was a total disaster. And so they went to Wanya Morris. Wanya Morris was a little bit better and then kind of fell apart as more teams decided to attack him and go after that left side of the offensive line. Then they bring in DJ Humphries, who tears his ACL late last season for the Cardinals. He's the only reason he's available is because he's working his way back from the ACL injury. Wanya Morris was such a disaster against the Raiders a few weeks ago. They rushed the timeline for Humphries. He picks up a hamstring injury, and now he's missed the last 2 games. And so they have to slide all-pro guard Joe Thuney from the inside to left tackle because they don't trust putting Wanya or Kingsley back at left tackle because it's been such a disaster. And so aside from the wide receiver issues, which we can obviously get into that too, because I do think that that's starting to take shape a little bit for the Chiefs now. And I think we saw it this past weekend against the Texans. But the offensive line has been the biggest issue. And now it's a question of like, if DJ Humphries gets healthy, do you put him back in at left tackle? Because in the one game he played, he didn't look particularly great either. And then he got injured. And Joe Thuney, the last 2 games, has really given them the best tackle play that they've had all season, which speaks to the kind of player that Joe Thuney is. Yeah. And also undrafted guard Mike Caliendo, who stepped in for Joe Thuney at left guard, has actually been really good. And so like the last 2 games, you could argue it's the best offensive line play they've had all season. And that's why the offense actually looks functional, because they went on a stretch here midway through the season where the offense didn't look functional. They couldn't finish off drives in the red zone. They had to settle for field goals, but they still found ways to get wins. And now the offense actually looks kind of good. And so it's like, I guess Joe Tooney's their left tackle moving forward, but I don't really know once DJ Humphries gets healthy.
I saw a passing chart for Patrick Mahomes in the Saturday victory at Arrowhead over the Houston Texans, and I was kind of astonished. I mean, a lot of completions. He had a good game, not a lot of shots downfield. Has that been the way that the Chiefs are approaching their passing attack? I understand he does have the ankle injury, and so you want to get the ball out quickly, even though he looked pretty good in terms of his mobility and pocket awareness. But does it speak more to the offensive line? Like, or is it both? I mean, is this just how they've been doing it all year? Because I've got to be honest, I haven't watched a lot of Chiefs games. They tend to play around the same time as the Steelers. What's that look like for the Chiefs and how they attack opposing defenses?
So we did see a shift in their offensive mindset last season, and I think a lot of that had to do with Rashee Rice and his development as the regular season went on, where finally, late in the season, they leaned into him and they were like, this guy's really good in the short intermediate area, breaking tackles and picking up yards after the catch. Then he goes down in week 3, done for the season on a fluke injury. And for whatever reason, they did not lean into the quick, short, precision passing game that worked so well for them last year. They leaned into the run for a little bit. And then Andy got, for whatever reason, I don't know if it was like, let's work through the issues and just see what happens. Let's going against the Panthers, worst run defense in the NFL, going against the Raiders, one of the worst run defenses in the NFL. We're going to refuse to run the ball the entire football game. And we're just going to try to take shots downfield and create explosive plays. And it just absolutely did not work. And it was never more apparent than that game against the Cleveland Browns where Patrick Mahomes gets injured, because in the second half, they're up 21-0, and Andy Reid's refusing to run the football. At one point, they had like 18 straight pass plays, and Mahomes had like 9 straight incompletions in that game, and he's just getting leveled like every other snap. And then he finally gets injured, and it's like, that was the first time I think Andy Reid was like, okay, I'm getting him killed out there. I got to change it. And so we finally saw it this last week, and we got a glimpse of it against the Raiders where they had one drive where they went no huddle. Everything was short, intermediate. Everything was get rid of the ball quick. And Mahomes carved him up and took him on a touchdown drive. And this game against the Texans was the first game all season we've really gotten where they actually leaned into it. They still took a couple shots downfield. They still haven't connected. Maybe if they can connect on those, I think it really shifts the offensive narrative around the Chiefs. But this is the best, most functional way for them to operate. And hopefully the Texans game was a sign of things to come for them, because they're a precision offense. They're a short passing 12-play scoring drive type of offense. Like the days of them scoring in 3-4 plays, like that's just not who they are anymore. And this is how they have to operate. So I'm hoping this is a trend for them moving forward, and that's how they decide to run things.
Well, against the Texans, they look like a very complete offense. When you talk about Hollywood Brown finally being back, and there were a lot of drops, the other tight end, Travis Kelce, I don't know his name. He had a couple drops. They were definitely, Patrick Mahomes and Hollywood Brown were not on the same page on a couple routes. Those things are going to iron themselves out. But at the same time, the Steelers are experiencing the same thing. What are you going to iron out between a Saturday and a Wednesday? Not much is the answer. Yeah. But I want to ask Chris Jones. We don't know the actual availability of Chris Jones for the defense. I want to ask you your take on what would a Chiefs defense look like without Chris Jones. We know what it looks like with him because he is one of the game's best game wreckers in the NFL across the board. What does it look like without him now?
It's going to be interesting because the Chiefs don't have any other dominant pass rushers. Like they're kind of similar to the Buffalo Bills. And like, I feel like the Buffalo Bills, they've got several guys that are just solid, but no guys like a Chris Jones, like a Myles Garrett, like a TJ Watt that can absolutely wreck a game on the defensive side of the ball. But outside of Chris Jones, it's Charles Omenihu, Mike Dana, Tershawn Wharton, who's an undrafted player who's having a really nice like contract season for the Chiefs. And Then George Karlaftis and Felix Anudike-Uzomah, who's kind of in the mix a little bit, but he's a late first round pick who hasn't really developed into much for them defensively. And honestly, with the quick turnaround and if the Chiefs win this one, they can lock up the number 1 seed. So it is a big game. Like they kind of need to show up and try to go win this football game so they can rest their starters in week 18. But with such a quick turnaround for Christmas Day, I would honestly be shocked if Chris Jones plays in this one. And that has me really worried, because when Chris Jones early in the season, when he wasn't as effective, it was because teams were like, we'll just put 3 guys on Chris Jones and make everybody else try to beat us. And their pass rush wasn't effective. Like those guys, George Karlaftis, Mike Dana, Tershawn Wharton, like they're guys that are winning because Chris Jones draws so much attention generally. But the difference being now is that Charles Omenihu was working his way back from a late season ACL tear, and he is back now and playing really well. So if Chris Jones isn't able to go in this game, I'm hoping Charles Omenihu is still like a difference maker for them, and they can find a way to generate pressure. And then, Steve Spagnuolo is going to blitz the hell out of you and try to find ways to get after the quarterback. So they're going to manufacture some stuff, but Charles Omenihu is the guy that I'm hoping will be able to step up if Chris Jones can't play.
All right, so let me ask you just about your take on the Steelers. So the Steelers are a team that obviously have coming off back-to-back losses to really good teams in Philadelphia and Baltimore, both on the road, mind you. They've had flashes of being a very good contending upper echelon team, and they've also had flashes where they just look like offensively, defensively, they're not capable of getting the job done. What's your viewpoint on the Steelers heading into this game on Christmas Day?
I mean, I'm worried about them. Because I think the last 2 games that we've seen of the Steelers, I don't think is the Steelers that we were seeing like a few weeks ago,
Sure,
where Russell Wilson was balling out and the offense looked really good. The defense is just doing what they always do. And I think the past few weeks have just been all about getting George Pickens healthy and getting George Pickens on the field. And I know Mike Tomlin's, I believe, said that they think he's got a good shot to play this week. So that's a scary matchup for the Chiefs corners, because their secondary has been up and down this season. It hasn't been nearly as good as it was last season. Trent McDuffie's still a star, but George Pickens is the exact type of profile wide receiver that even gives Trent McDuffie some problems, because he's a smaller, shorter corner, probably best suited to be an elite slot corner, but the Chiefs are playing him outside a lot because they don't really have any other options. And Pickens is the type of like physical ball winner, like go up and get it wide receiver that has given Trent McDuffie a lot of problems. So I think it's a very different feeling for me if Pickens can't go in this one, because I think he's so instrumental to the deep passing game for the Steelers and how they want to mix in the run. So I feel a lot better about it on the Chiefs side if Pickens can't go. Right. And then if Pickens is able to go, I'm a little bit worried about the matchup, because the Chiefs secondary has been burned a fair amount recently, even though they played a little bit better over the last couple of weeks.
This is going to be unique, and I'm going to ask you, I do not want a score prediction. I always say that, but this is going to be interesting. So the Chiefs Steelers in Pittsburgh, right now the Steelers are getting 2.5 points at home. That's the current line as we record this today, with an over-under of 43. So Steven, I want to ask you, just what's the vibe telling you going into this game? What do you think could be the outcome in your opinion?
I think it's gonna be really close. Like, I think the Chiefs don't have like massive blowout wins. Like even in the Texans matchup, I thought that was the best overall game they had played all season, and they still only won by 8 points. Like they can't get past the 1-score game narrative to save their lives. So I think definitively it's going to be a close game. It's gonna end. And the Steelers, I feel like you watch them much closer than I do, but I feel like regularly the Steelers are in these kind of just grinded out tough games that come down to late in the fourth quarter, and that's all the Chiefs play. So I think this is going to be a nerve-wracking game, and especially if George Pickens is able to go. I'm also a little bit worried about Pat Freiermuth. Like, I know I was looking into some numbers and stuff, and I feel like he hasn't gotten enough targets, but he's stepped up a little bit in the absence of George Pickens. And the Chiefs, one of their biggest weaknesses on defense this season is shutting down opposing tight ends. They get torched by every tight end. It doesn't matter who it is. So this should be a big Pat Fryermuth game. Like, I think if Pickens is available, that Steelers offense can test the Chiefs defense a little bit. And then if they don't have Chris Jones, I'm a little bit worried about the type of pressure they're going to be able to generate on Russell Wilson. So at the end of the day, I'm hoping the Chiefs still pull out another close victory and lock up this 1 seed so we can all kind of relax in week 18. But this short turnaround is going to be tough. And also the Chiefs played on Christmas Day last year by the Raiders and got destroyed. Like, they did not act like they were interested in playing on Christmas Day. So that's something that still worries me about this team too, because they have tendencies to play like that sometimes.
It's going to be interesting. And, you bring up Pat Fryermuth, and I've been a guy that thinks that he has never had his full potential tapped into since he's been in the league, since he was drafted in the second round out of Penn State. And so I would love to see a game where he kind of takes over. We haven't seen that from him outside of a Cincinnati game this year where he had a touchdown, and he scored some touchdowns. He's a good red zone threat, but outside of that, not so much. So we'll see how this plays out. But Steven, I appreciate your time. I want to give you an opportunity to plug what you're doing for Fans First Sports Network, any social media handles and stuff like that, if Steeler fans want to check out you and the other side of the docket leading up to the game.
Yeah. So you can find all of our stuff at Foolish Club Media on Apple and Spotify, or at Club Foolish on Twitter or X, and at Foolish Club Media on YouTube. We've got tons of stuff coming up over the next couple of days to preview this game. So yeah, if you want to get another side viewpoint of it, I highly encourage you to check that out.
You're doing great stuff for Fans First. I appreciate it. Good luck in this game. And I don't know, maybe we'll talk later down the road in the playoffs. You never know, Steven. Hey, enjoy the game, man. Enjoy your Christmas. Merry Christmas.
Yeah, you too. Merry Christmas, Jeff.